The Baltimore Ravens had their first joint practice with the Washington Commanders on Tuesday, and things got a little bit chippy. We'll talk about takeaways from the day and much more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens. We're your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here as always on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for tuning in today, making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available, all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube. This is the third day with this new background setup here with the live fish in the background. And the Ravens had their first day of a joint practices with the Washington Commanders on Tuesday. And here to talk about that with me is Reeta Hubbard of 105.7 The Fan, the Winning Drive podcast. And Reeta, I'm excited football is back. And I think we really got a taste of that on Tuesday with chippy practices and not just like the hold me back fights. We got punch fights in practice, which was, I love it personally. I love the intensity.
I do too. I love the chippiness of it. I mean, obviously you don't want, your guy getting cheap shotted in any type of way. But I love the fact that it allows these guys to really, this is their preseason, right? They don't really indulge in a lot of preseason games, especially now that they've taken that one game away and added it to the regular season. So the joint practices now are really made for what used to be that third preseason game where the starters would typically play for at least a half. So it's really good for them to get the opportunity to play against their competition. And what better way to do that than to play against the guys down the street who we're not rivals in terms of teams because they're in different conferences, but we're definitely some rivals in terms of cities. So there's been some jarring going on back and forth online. And then you see, obviously, everything that happened on the field. So it's been really fun to watch.
Yeah, and I know with the area, I know with certain DMV people, some people do not know what DMV means. And so
it's not Baltimore, by the way.
Yes, so they lump in certain athletes or certain celebrities in the DMV that are from Baltimore, and we say, no, those are our those are our athletes. Thank you very much. So with the Commanders and the Ravens, you're right. I think it's a good opportunity for both of them. I mean, the point that you made about the preseason, you're exactly right. And I talk about that all the time, is the fact that you would usually see with the 4 preseason games, starters would play maybe like a quarter in the first one, quarter and a half in the second one. Then they play like a full half in the third one. And then they did not play at all in the fourth one. With that game eliminated, as you just said, Reeta, this is essentially the starters' dress-up rehearsal. This is their dress rehearsal to get ready for the season. So I think people were excited to see Lamar, to see Mark Andrews in live action against an offense over there in Washington that has Sam Howell and Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, and a defense that features guys like Deron Payne and Chase Young, etc. But the chippiness of it all, we saw a couple of fights. One, Tylan Wallace punches Emmanuel Forbes, and Forbes was kind of punching at the ball a little bit after the play. So Wallace said, do not do that. Then we saw Devin Duvernay come over and body slam. Like, there were real wrestling moves getting put out there. Then the other one, Mark Andrews body slams a defender there. I think, Reeta, they're just ready to hit somebody that's not their teammate. After a couple of weeks of practices, getting into the groove of training camp, the players are just saying, all right, let's go hit somebody else now.
And I love that for them. Like, I love the fact that you have the opportunity to hit someone that is not the guy that you essentially have to eat with, sleep with when you're away, play with. You have the opportunity to hit someone new that is not on your team. And so sometimes things like that happen. Every now and again, it gets a little chippy. I love to see, my favorite part was Justin Tucker putting his helmet on. I don't know exactly what he was going to do in that moment, but it felt like he was ready for whatever. And hey, you like to see that. Justin Tucker is a guy, look, we consider him the greatest kicker of all time, but he also seems like he's down for the action too. So it was just interesting to see how all of that played out. And Mark Andrews, who is a guy that, I've had the opportunity to talk to when he's done the Tyus Bowser show. He's very, introverted and quiet, but those are the ones you got to watch out for because they're the ones that usually got some power in their punch. And his move was very wrestling-like. I feel like he watches some WWE on his time off because it really felt like he had that body slam a little too well. in my opinion.
It felt like that. Maybe Rocky Sin taught him some stuff. He was
Maybe,
former wrestling star. He's gotten flagged multiple times for suplexing guys on the field. So maybe Rocky Sin gave the team a little wrestling lesson here or there. But could you imagine Reeta taking a kick from Justin Tucker? Like if Justin Tucker decided he was about it and he came up and kicked you, I'd be hurting a little bit. I won't lie. I feel like that'd be a strong kick.
I'm not interested in finding out if the dude can hit 60 yards easily, like we saw him do literally in the preseason game, looking like he was in midseason form on Saturday night. I'm not interested to see what he can do to my head, or if I'm a guy, any other male parts that might be sensitive in that area. So I'm going to leave Justin Tucker alone of all people. I'll just deal with the fists and stuff over here.
Yeah, Justin Tucker can do his thing. I'm not going near Justin Tucker in a fight. But the practice on Tuesday, Reeta, I think we saw a lot from the offense, specifically Zay Flowers. We saw multiple clips of him cooking defenders, which has not been new over the course of training camp.
Right.
But the thing that Peter King said when he visited Ravens training camp was that defenders have to essentially hold Zay Flowers, interfere with Zay Flowers, or else he's just going to cook him at the line. We know he's a technician as a route runner, and we saw that multiple times over the course of Tuesday, beating Emmanuel Forbes, beating other Washington defensive backs. Do you feel like there's something different, Reeta, about Zay Flowers compared to maybe the rest of his draft class in terms of Jackson Smith-Njigba, Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, and two, the receivers the Ravens have brought in over the years?
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I feel like this is a guy that is complete. He can do it all. He can run the drags. He can run slot. You can put him outside if you want to. I think that he runs routes extremely well. His second gear is phenomenal. On top of that, there's going to be situations where he's going to command a lot of PI, pass interference flags. He's going to get a lot of holding flags because the guys are not going to be able to contain him as he breezes past them. As we saw in the first preseason game, he had a pass interference and a holding in his favor in that game. By the way, he also, can block if need be as well. So it really feels like that he can do it all. I don't recall a guy that can command that type of pass interference that the Ravens have had since Torrey Smith. And look, if you guys can remember one since him, then prove me wrong. But it feels like he has that. And then he also has all the other techniques and all the other attributes that he has physically that's going to be a problem for these defenses. So, it's funny because you and I talked about this prior to coming on. There's been some footage going around about Forbes, and I have no problem with that, right? If he's had some good plays, he's had good plays. But they try to make it seem like Forbes is locking down Ravens receivers, and then Zay Flowers, there's a video of him getting toasted by Zay Flowers. I mean, Zay Flowers has the potential to be something really special. And, I think that a lot of us kind of looked at it like, well, there's going to be Bateman on one side, there's going to be Odell on the other side, and maybe you see the slot situation for Zay. But I just don't think that you have to do that. You can put Zay anywhere. And I think that, he's going to be able to he's going to do it in stride. It's just going to be so easy for him. So I'm excited to see how he's going to be used this season. It has been a joy to watch him in these two practices, as well as the little bit of action that we saw him in that preseason game.
Yeah, and part of it too, I think, Reeta, is the fact that, if we go back to when Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews are literally the only two viable targets for Lamar in that offense, defenses could pick like, hey, we're going to neutralize this one guy and maybe the other guy will go off. And we saw that. But now with Zay Flowers, it takes pressure off of Odell. It takes pressure off of Rashad Bateman. You still have Mark Andrews. There are just so many weapons, by far the most weapons Lamar has ever had in his NFL career. And this is what we've been asking for so many years. Just get Lamar some weapons around him, or at least more consistent ones. And I think he finally has that. But speaking of the rest of practice, Reeta, we saw Lamar hit Odell Beckham on a long pass. It was a bit underthrown, but it still got there nonetheless. Odell also made a one-handed catch. How are you feeling about the offense so far as we've looked at training camp, you look at this practice, and then what you maybe saw during the preseason game, which we'll get to?
I mean, listen, it's still a work in progress, right? And I've always been one to say we have to give this offense a little bit of grace. I know that we're excited about the players involved. We're excited to have to be watching a new offensive coordinator come in and change some things up. But there's going to be some ebbs and flows here as they try to, come up with some consistency on what they're implementing in the new system. And so you know, with that, like the Lamar pass to Odell, it is a little underthrown. And look, Lamar is still learning Odell. You know, this is something that they're going to have to, you know, kind of come together and create a rhythm. And I think that they'll do that just fine. And that's why these types of joint practices are very important, because it does allow him to see, okay, well, I underestimated the speed of Odell. I got to, you know, put it out a little bit more here. Or Odell says, okay, I got to come, like Odell did in that video. He comes back to the ball. But this is the opportunity for guys to really learn and know the guys that they're playing with. And so then when the regular season comes, they have a better understanding of, you know, how far they got to get the ball to the guy, what the catch radius is, and such and so forth. So I don't make a really big deal about what's happening in these videos. Although, you know, look, I know people are going to be like, well, so-and-so won today. The offense won today. And that's fine, you know. But for me, it's really on seeing what the progressions are, both on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. And so you want to see Lamar connecting with guys. We know what Lamar can do with Mark Andrews. So that's nothing. We don't care about that, but we want to see what he can do with guys like Odell, guys like Zay. These are new guys that are being implemented into a brand new system. And so it's been fun to see how they potentially will be throwing the ball around come September.
And yeah, that's it, because I think for the Ravens, it's not only they're implementing a whole new offensive system, but you're right. They brought in multiple key pieces and pieces that are going to be a major part of their offense this year. So it's expected that not everything is up to where it needs to be right now. They still have plenty of time before the regular season starts. And this is the opportunity now in these joint practices, as we've talked about, Reeta, for these starters to get some live, not game reps, but live speed reps against other teams. So I think it's important. And I think the Ravens did show some stuff in that practice against the Commanders. But coming up in the second part of the show, we'll be diving into what the defense showed against that Commanders offense and more. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to still on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by Nutrafol. And you don't have to choose between better hair growth and your health. Nutrafol provides a whole body health approach for men that promotes healthier hair. There's no drugs, no compromises, just better hair. And men sometimes think losing their hair is inevitable. You can take control of your hair's future with Nutrafol's science-backed hair growth supplement for men. Did you know that 80% of men will experience hair thinning in their lifetime? It is normal, but it doesn't have to be your fate. You can get ahead of thinning with Nutrafol. Nutrafol's #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve your hair growth, visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements use physician-formulated, natural, science-backed ingredients. Their drug-free, patented technology provides consistent, reliable results. Go to Nutrafol.com/men to take their hair health wellness quiz, identify causes of your thinning hair. And Nutrafol will give you a personalized plan for better hair health through whole body wellness. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting the root causes of thinning, such as stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, lifestyle, and metabolism, through whole body health. And it works. In a clinical study, 84% of men showed improvement in their hair after 6 months taking Nutrafol hair growth supplements. Take the first step to visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men. Enter the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, spelled Nutrafol.com/men. Enter promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's Nutrafol.com/men, promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Welcome back to our second part of this Wednesday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Reeta Hubbard. And Reeta, again, the Commanders and the Ravens putting on their first day of joint practices yesterday. A very chippy day, but not just for the offense. The two big fights happened with the Ravens offense versus the Commanders defense. But we did see some physicality and chippiness during the defensive side of things too. Our Darius Washington mixing it up in there. But one thing that I think was very well noted is that Odafe Oweh had a really good day on Tuesday. 3 total sacks. And that's, I mean, it's huge. You can't be understated how huge that is, because of the fact that the Ravens are currently working with Oweh as their #1 guy. David Ojabo is their #2. Can't forget about Tyus Bowser as well when he comes off the NFI list. But they've been sniffing around Kyle Van Noy and Jadeveon Clowney, and there have been questions about, well, are they going to bring in a veteran, or are they just going to roll with their young guys and have Bowser be the veteran leader? So how important is it for Oweh to kind of get on track like we saw on Tuesday against the Commanders in this practice?
It's extremely important. I mean, because at the end of the day, there's so much uncertainty there. We don't know when Tyus is coming back. We don't know what Ajabo is going to do. Although I think that we can project what he's going to be like because of what the little bit that we saw in him playing last year at the end of the season. But we still just don't know. There's just not enough film and he didn't play enough for us to completely understand. So Owe really has to find a way to step up coming into his third season. It's very possible that, the Ravens definitely brought in Jadeveon Clowney. We do know that. And to my understanding, they offered him a deal, and apparently he didn't love it because he went to Jacksonville and toured with them. Maybe he's just trying to use it as a leverage. I'm not sure. You already mentioned Van Noy, but I wonder if the Ravens feel comfortable with saying that, we're going to stick with what we have. We feel strong about Owe if they don't get Van Noy or if they don't get, Clowney. So this is very important for him to step it up. I am a person because a lot of people use the B word and I don't like it. Rhymes with rust. And they use it too prematurely oftentimes. And I think that we've heard that a lot when it comes to Owe because he was a first round draft pick. But we all should have understood that he came in as a first round draft pick as, they considered him raw, but they liked all of the intangibles that came with him. Not necessarily that he was ready to play right then and there, but they felt like this was an investment that was going to pay off long term. And so I'm a person that believes that the third year for a lot of players is when you really get to see what it is that their worth is, how well that they're able to adapt and where they are in terms of playing football. So this is an important year for Owe because this is going to be his third year playing. And so it would really be great if he does step it up because of so much uncertainty at the outside linebacker and pass rushing position. Do you stick with them and say, we're just going to, feel confident and he's going to do what he's, what we want him to do? And so for him to have those 3 sacks, and he also had pressures as well, in addition to the 3 sacks. I mean, it's a strong case to say, okay, we really feel like all the offseason work that he's talked about doing and that his coaching staff has praised him about thus far is going to pay off in the long run. So you really hope that this is the year that Owe can step up and be one of the leaders on this defense.
Yeah, you mentioned the third year thing, which is so funny because going back, I'll take us back in time a little bit to 2017 when the Ravens took Tyus Bowser and Tim Williams. And their third years, because Bowser and Williams didn't really have it figured out in the first couple of years. They were still learning a little bit. And the third year, I had kind of thought to myself, well, this is the year for both of them. And if they can't show enough early on in the year, or maybe by the mid-season point, something might happen. And what we saw were 2 different career arcs. Tyus Bowser figured it out. It wasn't his breakout year came the year after, but he started to figure it out. We saw the potential. Tim Williams, on the other hand, was missing assignments, wasn't reading things right, and he got cut mid-year. So for Owe, this is not that the Ravens going to cut him mid-season or anything. I think that's a little too far. But I think this is a big year to just determine, well, where is his career headed? And if he has a big season, he can continue to build off of that into the future, which I think is also very important, especially with the lack of veteran presence. Tyus Bowser is a great veteran to have, but if Bowser can't get back in time, if Owe goes down, if Ajabo goes down, you're getting they're essentially 3 deep healthy because I don't think Tavius Robinson is ready yet. He has the intangibles, but he's not ready yet. So,
and you wonder if Trenton Simpson is a guy that they'll try to use in those situations. He's done things like that at Clemson. He's rushed the passer at Clemson. So it's, he's a guy that they feel like that they can use, they can plug and play. And so you hope that maybe he can help. But ultimately, I agree with you. I mean, if Tyus is not there, it does put your linebacker position in a strained situation.
Yeah, and you can have versatility like a Simpson, which I think is a really good idea, and honestly might happen. We know they've experimented with Malik Harrison on the edge and playing Sam, so maybe that's an option for him.
Yep.
But I think I just feel a little better about the position if they were to bring somebody in. But we'll see what the money is like, because I think at the corner position, Reeta, it's kind of the same thing, which honestly might be a little worse, because I think, and I don't know if you agree, but Marlon Humphrey to me is the second most important player on the Ravens. Obviously, Lamar's number 1, because if he goes down, their corner room probably is a bottom 5 unit, maybe the worst unit in the league. They essentially traded out Marcus Peters for Rock Yassin, who I think his physical traits fit the defense a little better than Peters. But outside of that, It's a bunch of young guys. Jalen Armour-Davis, who isn't practicing, Pepe Williams, who has gone down. So it's the Kevon Seymours of the world. It's Daryl Worley. It's Ardarius Washington. So where's kind of your comfort level 1 through 10 on this corner room right now? Because I'm feeling a little iffy about it.
A 2. Literally, and I would say 0 if it weren't for the safeties, who I really feel that's their strong suit right now with Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton and Geno Stone. But as of right now, and I say 2 with Marlon Humphrey there, who I think that Marlon Humphrey is completely underrated. I don't love the way that people, I think, disrespect Marlon in terms of how they, categorize him in terms of top corners in this league. I don't think that there's many corners that you can consider to be better than Marlon Humphrey. I want to be on the record of saying that. But outside of him, I have no idea what Rock Ya-Sin. I mean, I can look at some previous tape when he was with the Raiders and see what he can do. But as a Raven, I have no idea what Rock Ya-Sin can do as of yet. We've seen Brandon Stevens. We know what that's like. We've seen Worley. We know what that's like. Pepe Williams, we can't see what that's like. Jalen Armour-Davis, we can't see what that's like. So you do have to wonder what the Ravens are going to do. Do you bring back Kyle Fuller? I mean, I feel like you have to think about it because you need depth at that position. And so, it's very... particularly with the Ya-Sin situation where, Harbaugh is like, oh, he'll be back, but he's not back yet. Us not knowing how long his injury is going to sustain. And then the situation with Pepe, he's essentially gone for much of the season, it appears, due to his injury. You just have to wonder, what is the plan going to be? I mean, I've heard some things that people feel like, well, maybe the Ravens feel like they've invested a lot of money into defense and they want to, do more on the offensive side of the ball because it is an offensive league. And okay, while I understand that, we know, you and I know, Kevin, and a lot of the flock knows that the Ravens love them some DBs. That's one thing they've always been on. They've been on the trenches and they've been on DBs. So those are the 3 that, they're going to always try to find those guys. And as of right now, they don't have enough guys. And so you hope that, they can go out and find somebody that's left, maybe like a Kyle Fuller, and hope that Ya-Sin is available come week 1 and he's fully healthy. But man, you have to essentially pray that Marlon Humphrey is not going to be injured this year, because you don't want to know what that looks like when he's not there. Unfortunately, it could get ugly.
It essentially, and I don't, maybe you agree with this or not, Reeta, I think it's the wide receiver position of last year. Now, there wasn't a Marlon Humphrey in that room, wide receiver wise, last year, but it almost makes it a little worse because if Humphrey we knew if Bateman were to go down, it was trouble in that room last year. And then they lost Duvernay too. If Humphrey goes down, and you never know, like anything can happen with injuries in this league. I don't know what they do. Like, I don't know where they go. And the issue is that we're not in March anymore. So there aren't like top options available. So your options are William Jackson, who they brought in for a visit on Friday. Do you bring in Bryce Callahan to play in the slot? Those aren't necessarily. I think
Darby is still available. Yeah. I mean, but like you said, these are the scrapes now. Unfortunately, I mean, for lack of a better term, these are the scrapes.
Yeah, and to me, like needle moving moves are important, at least to me, when I'm thinking about how I would personally build a roster, because you have young guys, you want to see what you have there, and that's why I think these joint practices are a bit of a turning point, because if guys aren't stepping up in these joint practices, then in preseason too, to a lesser extent, then you can say, well, we got to go out there and get something, whether it's a trade. And I will say during cut down day, Reeta, we might see 1 or 2 guys cut that could come in and be maybe the Ravens' third corner, because there are teams like the Ravens have an embarrassment of riches at certain positions. Other teams have an embarrassment of riches at corner. So maybe they go out there and bring in somebody else. But we did see, we heard by all accounts that Jeremy Lucien, an undrafted corner, had 2 pass breakups. There were a couple other guys. Ardarius Washington got physical. So those are the types of things you want to see from these guys, because essentially, I don't even know, who would you label? Is Kevon Seymour the third corner on this roster right now? I don't know who I'd put.
I'd say Stevens.
I don't know where he fits
on, though. Him being the opposite before, a couple years ago. But I'm just saying that very loosely. I mean, I have no idea who they would go to as the third guy, at all. And that's the scary part.
Yeah, that part scares me. So hopefully they get some, because I think you need at least 2 of your young guys to step up and good health for the room this year. And no team can be strong at every single position. It's just not realistic. But I think in today's league, I always say it, Reeta, the Ravens start the year with 50 million healthy corners. They end the year with 2. I will never forget 2014 when they brought in Rashawn Melvin off the street to be a top corner option for them.
Never forget those. I wish I could, actually. And you think about how the Ravens literally could have gone to the AFC Championship and maybe a Super Bowl had they just had 2 healthy corners that year.
My argument is always they would have won the Super Bowl if they got out of that divisional round, and they should have, but Danny Amendola and Julian Edelman, had other plans, unfortunately. But coming up in the final part of the show, we'll be diving into preseason notes. We'll get Reeta's thoughts on the game on Saturday and the Ravens' 24th straight preseason win. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. We've returned, rounding out Locked On Ravens here on Wednesday. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Reeta Hubbard. And Reeta, I want to ask everybody this question. I want to get as many opinions as I can. The Ravens won the 24th straight preseason game. Are you someone that just wants the streak to be over and just get the loss over with? Or do you want it to go for as long as it can go and just keep racking up wins?
I did kind of want it to be over on Saturday when they went for the 2-point conversion. I just did. And I feel bad for saying that. I really do. Because, you watch the Ravens, you want them to obviously be successful. But ultimately, this is such a meaningless stat. And I just want it to go away. But again, it's a meaningless stat but there's meaning to it. And by that, I mean, there's meaning to preseason games, right? There's meaning to knowing what your number 2s look like against your opponent's number 2s, knowing what your number 3s look like against your opponent number 3s, because that says a lot about your talent scouting and how you built your roster, right? And then it also goes to what your coaching looks like. So there's importance to preseason. I just don't care if they win or not. I really don't care. And I brought this up on 105.7 The Fan earlier today. I remember vividly the year that the Colts won the Super Bowl. It was the first one against the Chicago Bears that Peyton Manning won. Mm-hmm. And I remember they were 0-5 that preseason year. And by 5, they played the Hall of Fame game that year. So they were 0-5 in preseason and then won the Super Bowl. So it means nothing to me when it comes to regular season. I'm not even sure if we're going to see an entire half these next 2 games of starters. So I just don't care. But I would not be mad if they continue to win. If it makes everybody else happy, if y'all like it, I love it. For me, I just don't care.
It's so funny to me because there have been all these narratives that have been kind of swung out of it. It's like, oh, well, the Ravens are try-harding the preseason. I'm like, no, they're not. They just, every year they have depth. It's not like they're putting Lamar out there for 4 quarters and say, go put up 50 points on the 4th stringers. Like they put out their backups. They want to see their young guys. It's just them going through the motions. And it's funny because I think we've kind of heard that narrative now of, oh, well, Baltimore that's their Super Bowl. The preseason is their Super Bowl. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's so I think maybe Sam Howell, who's the golden child over there in Washington, will be able to end the streak for all of us. But whether they win or lose, I want to see progression from the players. That's what it is. And I think we saw that on Saturday. I think offensively, defensively, it wasn't necessarily a perfect game, but I think we saw some stuff from the quarter. Tyler Huntley looked pretty good. I thought Josh Johnson was all right. The running backs, Justice Hill looked electric. We all know Keaton Mitchell. His box score won't say it because of that holding penalty, but he looked electric out there too. Defensively, I thought Malik Harrison had a really good game. What'd you see, Reeta, and what'd you like out of that?
Yeah, I really liked Keaton Mitchell, like you mentioned, and the box score doesn't, but he also had, I believe, 2 returns that were really good. So that's not going to reflect the box score. And like you said, that long touchdown that got returned from a holding call, I really like the way that he runs. I see a lot of jokes about J.K. Dobbins coming back because of Keaton Mitchell. I think he was just going to come back regardless. But hey, whatever makes J.K. come back, we'll take it, right? I really think that Tyler Huntley, as of right now, shows us that he's the number number 2, Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley. Let's call him what he is. Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley is the number 2 quarterback until further notice. And I have been critical about Tyler Huntley in terms of his arm strength. I do believe that, there's other quarterbacks that have stronger arms than Tyler, but I think that he's comfortable. I think he's comfortable with this team. And although this offense is new, he's comfortable with the players that he has, even though, some of these are new guys, but he knows a lot of the players already. He knows J.K. Gus and Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely and those types of guys. So I think that him being here and the comfortable nature of him being a Raven years previous really allows him to be the number 2 guy. I'm a person that likes the ideal of Anthony Brown. I think that there's some Anthony Brown things that he needs to work on, like his throwing motion is very weird and slow. But if he can work on that, I feel like Anthony Mitchell could be a backup. I just don't think that he's going to make this team, which is unfortunate for him. But yeah, there's of course we talked about Zay. And then there's some guys that I just, you gotta wonder if they make it out the 53, and I just don't see that. Like James Prochet, right? Like I root for Prochet. I was a fan of his coming out of college. I watched some games when he was in college, thought that he could be a good player in this league. And I just think sometimes guys like him need a fresh start. I think it's all mental at this point for him and not physical. And I just think that it's very possible that he has to move along. Ben Cleveland is another one that I always scratch my head about because he has the tools. He has the, his run blocking is really good. But his pass blocking is not to be desired. And that's just me saying it nicely. But outside of that, you wonder how is he going to be here? Are they going to keep him for depth, for offensive line depth, or are they going to move on? Because as of right now, they're using 2 other guys at the left guard position, and Salah and John Simpson to see, which I think, by the way, Salah might be winning that battle as of right now, but not by much. I just think that, if you had to choose, you're going to go with the younger guy, which is Salah at this point. But, it's the first preseason game. So we got to see some things. But I think that this game coming up this weekend will give us a little bit more of an idea of what guys can do. Hopefully guys that I mentioned like Prochet and Cleveland can redeem themselves because they're going to get an opportunity to play again. And we'll see what guys are going to be more consistent. Kolar will be another guy that I'd like to see some more consistency from because he had a fumble as well. So you want to see some guys right their wrongs coming up in this second game. And I think that will happen. I think that this joint practice will probably do a lot of good in terms of going into this second game.
Yeah, and I think that the physicality will probably switch over from the practice to the game. So maybe some extra fireworks over there. But yeah. I think it's interesting too, Reeta, because with the offense, we're all looking forward to what it's actually going to look like come week 1. And obviously Todd Monken's not going to go out there and throw everything in his vault in the first preseason game. He's keeping stuff under wraps. But to me, I thought one key area that I at least was encouraged by was some of the spacing we saw and the willingness to at least try to get his guys into space. It was a failed screen to Isaiah Likely, but he was trying to get Isaiah Likely into space, get blockers out in front. We saw him give the ball to Zay Flowers and he made a guy miss badly. So it feels like to me with Greg Roman, it was, guys are running into each other on routes. They're clogging one side of the field. That was taking away from the skill sets of the skill players. And it was handicapping the offense when it didn't need to be. So for me, at least, I was encouraged by what we saw by Todd Monken, but I understand that it's not everything we're going to see. We're going to see a lot more as the regular season picks up.
Yeah, I agree. And I think with Greg Roman's offense, the issue with that was those weren't designed plays, the guys that were near each other. What was going on was those were option routes. And I think Greg Roman, to his detriment, allowed guys to run option routes who probably should not have been allowed to run option routes. I think that you have guys like Mark Andrews and probably a guy like Odell who can run option routes. That Mark Andrews is very good at that. That is something he is very good at. Odell is a veteran in this league. He also probably is really good with finding the soft space in between the zones to get in and to get some separation there. But some guys need to be told what to do. Okay. okay, some guys need to be told, you go here, you go here, and you go here. And I think that's how Monken's offense is going to be a little bit more structured in that regard. So it will be interesting to see. Now, I think that you mentioned the screens. It's funny because, I don't think when people say, oh yeah, teams that run screens, the Ravens are a team that comes to anybody's mind in terms of like historically running screens. It's just something the Ravens just never really have done much of, over time. So it will be interesting to see if Monken does do that and allow more screens, something that I really would love to see. And I think that you do have the guys. I mean, Zay is out there going to be a blocker. You got Kolar, who's out there that he said he's gained 10 pounds because he's probably going to have to block more. You got to figure out something to do with Pat Ricard. So there's some guys out there that you can definitely use to do some blocking downfield. It will be fun. I mean, to see a guy like Zay, I know that the busted up play from the first preseason game, the one that you mentioned that he made a guy miss, it didn't I think he just got back to the line of scrimmage. But, if that goes off, if it's successful and Zay is as fast as he is, I mean, that's going to be some nasty, nasty business for opposing defenses. So I'm excited to see if they evolve in terms of the screen play.
And one thing we actually saw at the joint practice on Tuesday, Reeta, was I can't remember the name of it, but essentially one blocker pulls to the opposite side and everybody else goes the other way. And they throw the ball to the side with the blockers on. I think it was like an option pull screen or something like that. So he's implementing different systems and different plays to utilize throughout the season. So I think, and Monken even said himself, he likes some of the trickeration aspect of things. So that's another thing the Ravens didn't really do. They didn't really run any trickeration plays. And when they tried, it was James Prochet on a horribly timed play call, first of all, and not a great throw. Second of all, I think that's a play not a lot of people are going to forget in not in a good way.
Not in a good way.
Yeah, so I think that there's a lot to hopefully look forward to with Todd Monken and his offense. And I think over the course of the rest of the preseason, the second day of joint practices, which will be taking place today, we'll get to see a little bit more of that, but we're not going to see everything until probably later on in the regular season, which is the right thing to do. You don't want to give everything away.
For sure. Absolutely. I'm not giving up everything for anybody. I'm just going to do the basics. Basic things, just to get some guys their feet wet a little bit. I have to assume we won't see again a vast majority of starters. So, you're going to be seeing backups. So you're not going to give the backups all the good stuff. You gotta leave that and save that for Houston, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we'll see maybe Patrick Queen will play a drive, but I wouldn't expect to see many starters, if any, they want to save their guys, especially after what happened with JK a couple years ago. I think they're going to be cautious about it. And that's how it should be. They should not have played their starters in that preseason game a couple years ago. And I think they learned their lesson. Unfortunately, it was the hard way, but I think they learned it. And
I agree.
That's what it is now. But Reeta, I appreciate you hopping on. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Please tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Sure. Of course, at the NFL Chick on Instagram, on Twitter, Facebook. Of course, Winning Drive with myself and Cordell Woodland from Shaking It Up Sports. The Glenn and Rita Show on 105.7 The Fan, Wednesdays and Sundays. And then every now and again, I'm on Brother from Another on the Peacock channel, as well as Sirius XM 85. So check it out.
Yeah, she's everywhere. I'll put the links to her work in the description below. She does great work, and it's a great time to be a Baltimore sports fan, isn't it, Rita?
Absolutely.
The Ravens are back. Usually the Orioles are kind of the ones that are like, can they be good this year? Can they take us to the football season? But now we're excited for baseball season.
I am still in the thick of it. I usually go to the games every Tuesday that they're home. So, if you guys are out there on Tuesdays and you see me, give me a holler, because I'm still supporting my O's, man. It's been a fun ride. But of course, it's football season. So we can do both. Hey, some cities know how this is. This is new to us, but we just have to learn how to adapt.
Exactly. Baltimore is a sports city. I always say it when I can. Some people don't think it is, but it absolutely
it definitely is for sure.
100%. Rita, I appreciate you for hopping on again. Then thank you for tuning into Locked On Ravens today. Coming up tomorrow, more Ravens content from us. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.